Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscaboo Horror Reviews. I'm here with a not necessarily top 5, but I'm trying to do something similar to the videos I did that were essentially just 5, disturbing movies that may have been overlooked or aren't really recommended when it comes to disturbing movies. I'm trying to do something similar to that, but this is essentially 5 really great or, at least really entertaining and enjoyable bad movies that aren't often mentioned when it comes to discussions on great bad movies or when it just comes to talking about, bad movies in general. These movies never come up, seemingly ever, and these are some ones that I think I would personally say are pretty high up there. Some of these are. Some of them are... These are basically just a bunch of overlooked kind of gems of bad movie gold that I kind of wanted to just talk about a little bit and recommend. That's really about it, so let's just get right into it. Alright, these are in no particular order, and starting off at the first spot, we have the Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults. Now, I don't know if this counts as a movie, but I'm going to go ahead and count it anyway. This is essentially a law enforcement training instructional video about satanic cults. It is meant to essentially inform and educate the viewer, which is intended to be police officers, about satanic cults. And this being a piece of Christian propaganda from the 90s, you already know where this is going, and you already know whether or not this is something you will laugh at and enjoy. This tape is absolutely fucking wild. It's on YouTube right now. You can watch it like right after. You can watch it right now, and it's so much worth your time. They go through and they bring in somebody who is apparently previously a satanic cult member, but the guy's like a fat 45-year-old man who looks nothing like you would expect somebody to be in a satanic cult, and it's like, oh, I just got out of this cult, and he goes around and shows in this public park where apparently teenagers have been doing satanic rituals, but it's just kind of graffiti of like a pentagram and an inverted cross. There is an entire segment saying that, things that Satanists and members of satanic cults are prone to doing is digging up corpses and eating the heart of a desecrated corpse in order to gain that person's power. This is absolute fucking wild satanic panic shit from the 90s, and it's something that is thoroughly enjoyable and amazing, and I would honestly say is one of the greatest satanic panic videos I've ever seen. If it wasn't for one particular segment in it, and I'm not gonna say what it is just because, but this particular segment is pretty much almost entirely derails this thing 3/4 of the way through. By mentioning a subject that is very not funny, and it becomes more disgusting and needlessly depressing than it is funny at that point. But yeah, fucking Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults. This is some really good quality shit, let me tell you. Up next, we got Monstrosity, or pretty much any Andy Milligan film. As you guys know, I've recently become a big Andy Milligan film. So at this spot, I'm pretty much going to say any film from him. But I'm going to talk about one in particular that, even when it comes to people who like Milligan's work, this one doesn't seem to be discussed that often. This is a movie called Monstrosity. This movie is a combination of Gollum horror elements and Frankenstein horror elements, with it being about a medical student whose girlfriend is horrifically murdered and gutted by a gang member, And in order to get revenge, this guy and his, like, two other, medical school friends, decide to create a giant golem that they call Frankie. And they bring this thing to life using, like, a combination of, like, voodoo science and dark magic. And they end up... And the thing ends up coming alive and going on a killing spree for, like, 10 minutes. And then you follow the character Frankie as he, like, gets a girlfriend and becomes overly emotionally attached to a teddy bear. Did I also forget to mention that Frankie has the arm of a fucking gorilla and a giant red afro? Because that's kind of important. He also meets his guardian angel and gets hooked on cocaine. You might be thinking there's no way this movie exists, but it does because of Andy Milligan. For some reason, if you look through Andy Milligan's filmography, there are a lot of movies in his filmography. There are quite a few vampire movies. There are a couple werewolf movies in there. There's even a take on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with his film The Man with Two Heads. And there's even a take on, Sweeney Todd with his film Bloodthirsty Butchers. But here we got his take on both Gollum and Frankenstein movies, and this is the most un-Frankenstein and Gollum movie ever made, and it's kind of a brilliant piece of cinema, to be honest. Very much worth watching, and there's even in the section in the credits where they say Frankie will be back in Monstrosity 2, and there was no Monstrosity 2. Alright, and this next one is from Ohio independent filmmaker J.R. Brookwalter. I'm talking about his shot-on-video film from the 90s, Zombie Cop. This is a movie that you almost entirely hear nothing but negative things about, and I can kind of understand why. It's a really awful shot-on-video film, but it's also kind of amazing in a way. This movie has to deal with a cop who was a zombie, essentially going after the guys who killed him in the first place. And you kind of start to get confused almost instantly when you're watching this movie, because they obviously couldn't afford makeup effects to make the cop look like a zombie, so they just kind of covered him in bandages. So he's more of a mummy cop or an Invisible Man cop than he is a zombie cop. I don't know what else to say. This is one of those movies very similar to, I would say, like, Things. It's not as incoherent as Things, although this film is pretty much an absolute fucking mess in every way. But there are some pretty cool stunts that they did in the movie with, laying on the windshields of cars as they're driving and shit. And this movie was shot on video, so I don't think there could possibly be a way to fake that on video. Without, it costing you money. But yeah, this is one of those movies like Things, where if you were to tell me that this movie is actually some kind of student film, like satire parody about how hard it is to make a low-budget movie, I would believe you, because this movie is one of the most, like, one of the lowest quality shot-on-video films I've ever seen, and that's really saying something. But it's also a movie I enjoy quite a bit, and I even, let me get it off the old wall here. I even have a slipcover of Zombie Cop signed by the director J.R. Brookwalter, because I met him at a convention. He was a very nice guy. And I told him I love Zombie Cop, which I do love me some Zombie Cop. But either way, yeah. This spot goes to fucking Zombie Cop. Oh, God. The next one is a film distributed by Troma Entertainment. This film, when it was kind of released, Lloyd Kaufman went on record in saying that he thinks it is the best film he has seen in about 40 years. And to be honest, this is one of the best exploitation films I've ever seen since Kaufman's own Poultrygeist Night of the Chicken Dead. Not since that film, which that film came out about 12 years ago. And not since that movie came out have I seen a exploitation film this trashy, violent, stupid, awful, lowbrow, just ridiculous, yet at the same time funny and soulful, and dare I even say kind of thought-provoking. Honky Holocaust is a movie about the Manson family committing the Manson murders and actually successfully hiding in their bunker that they were planning on hiding in, and to wait out the giant race war that they started by committing these murders. Well, in this film, they were right, a race war starts, but instead of rising to the surface to inherit the Earth, like they thought they were going to do, they rise to the surface and realize that black people won this race war. And this results in them just a bunch of racist characters and members of the Manson family going out and getting what they deserve. It's a stupid splatter film that is just awful and poorly made and cheesy and very unintentionally surreal and kind of uncomfortable in how the surrealness blends with the low budget and the story and effects and everything. It's really violent, and I would highly recommend this movie to just about anybody. It's arguably one of the best movies about racism since American History X, and I will stand by that fucking statement, because holy hell is this movie something you will never forget, even if you want to forget it, which most people will want to forget it. Alright, and we go from fucking what is basically borderline Nazi-exploitation to some blaxploitation to end the video. I'm talking about the blaxploitation monster movie Blackenstein, also known as the Black Frankenstein. Oof, okay. This movie is a trip. Some of the most well-known blaxploitation films are movies like Dolomite and Superfly and most obviously Blackula. And while Blackula is probably one of the most well-made and interesting blaxploitation horror films out there, I would argue that Blackenstein is actually a better, or at least more fun movie than Blackula. This movie, very obviously, was made to cash in on the success of Blackula. This movie is essentially about a black Vietnam soldier who stepped on a landmine, and in stepping on this landmine, he loses all of his limbs. I don't necessarily understand how that's possible, but I've never stepped on a landmine myself, so I can't say much. But he loses, his arms and legs, and he agrees to be part of this experimental surgery to essentially regain his legs. This results in one of the doctors working on the experiment purposely sabotaging it because the Vietnam veteran's girlfriend won't date him, so he's like, I'm gonna fuck up this guy's meds, and he swaps him around, which results in this Vietnam veteran becoming a 7-foot tall, afroed Blackenstein that even walks with his arms stretched out like the classic fucking Boris Karloff Frankenstein. The thing that's really interesting about this movie is that not just that it's an immensely awful and cheap movie, trust me it is, but there's parts in this movie that use actual props from the original Universal Frankenstein. There are actual props from that movie used in this movie. On top of that, this movie was written and produced by, I can't remember the guy's full name, but this guy was a criminal defense attorney, and he decided one day he didn't want to, be an attorney anymore, and decided to just make monster movies instead. So, after deciding he wants to make monster movies, he writes this film, and then apparently writes and directs a blaxploitation Jack the Ripper film called Black the Ripper, which has never seen the light of day. Apparently, whether or not it was made is actually still being questioned. He also wrote the scripts for 2 never-made Sherlock Holmes movies, one of which would have starred Alice Cooper as Dracula fighting Sherlock Holmes. And a big contributing factor as to why these movies never got made was a combination of Blackenstein made no money, and the fact that this the producer and writer of Blackenstein, he was actually murdered. He was found murdered in his mansion in a gangland-style killing that to this day has gone unsolved. They don't know who did it, and they haven't found out since. To top off all of these weird things, this guy happened to live in the same mansion that Bela Lugosi lived in. Do I need to say anything else about Blackenstein to prove that this is the holy fucking grail of blaxploitation cinema, honestly? Like, this sits up there with Dolomite and Petey Wheatstraw and fucking JD's Revenge for me, honestly. This movie is absolutely fucking amazing in its own beautiful, awful way. And that's a big reason, and that's why I recommend this one like the highest. Keep in mind these were in no particular order, but this one is the one I'd probably recommend the most. Either way, guys, it's Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.